My name is Connie, 58 years old, and I've spent my life as a nurse taking care of others. Today, I was heading to my son Adam's in law's Christmas party in my 12-year-old sedan when I spotted a stranded luxury car on the snowy roadside. Despite knowing how his wife Amelia's wealthy family judges my simple life, I couldn't drive past someone in need. That decision would change everything. Before I continue my story, if you're watching this, please hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're enjoying this from. After all, you never know when a simple act of kindness might completely transform your holiday season. I've been a widow for 8 years now. My husband John passed away from a sudden heart attack, leaving me to finish raising our son Adam on my own. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we had enough. Our modest 3-bedroom home in Riverside, a small town about 2 hours from the city, was filled with love, if not luxury. I worked double shifts at Riverside Community Hospital to ensure Adam had everything he needed, especially after John died. Those years were tough, but seeing Adam graduate high school with honors made every sacrifice worthwhile. Adam attended State University on a partial scholarship, and I picked up extra weekend shifts to cover the remaining tuition. He was always a brilliant boy studying business and finance. That's where he met Amelia Blackwell during his junior year. She was studying art history, not because she needed a career, but because her family believed in the right kind of education for their daughter. The Blackwells are old money, banking industry royalty with a name that opens doors most people don't even know exist. The first time Adam brought Amelia home to meet me, I could see the slight wrinkle in her nose as she entered our living room. She was polite, complimenting my charming home and the quaint way I had decorated it. Each word felt like a tiny needle. I made my special pot roast that night, the one Adam had always loved. Amelia picked at it, asking if the vegetables were organic and mentioning something about her family's personal chef. Despite my reservations, Adam was in love. I watched my down-to-earth son transform over the next year. New clothes, new haircut, new vocabulary. He started dropping names of exclusive restaurants and clubs I'd never heard of. When he called to tell me he'd proposed, I felt both happiness and fear. I wanted him to have everything, but I worried about losing the son I knew. The Blackwell family is the very definition of high society. Richard Blackwell is the CEO of First Capital Investment Group, managing billions in assets. His wife Jacqueline comes from another banking family, the Harringtons. They live in a mansion in Lakeview Estates, the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, with 6 bedrooms, a pool house, and grounds maintained by a team of landscapers. They have vacation properties in the Hamptons, Aspen, and the south of France. Their daughter Amelia has never worked a day in her life, and her older brother Bradley is being groomed to take over the family business. The wedding was the most lavish event I'd ever attended. I saved for months to buy an appropriate dress, something the mother of the groom should wear at such an occasion. When Jacqueline saw me, she smiled thinly and said, "How brave of you to choose such a unique color." Later, I overheard her telling another guest that it was refreshing to see someone so comfortable with being different. I spent most of the reception sitting alone, watching my son dance in a world I couldn't access. After the wedding, things changed rapidly. Adam and Amelia moved into a luxury apartment paid for by her parents. Our weekly calls became monthly, then sporadic. When they did visit, Amelia would make comments about how they couldn't stay long in such a small town because it gave her migraines. Richard once asked me if I'd considered upgrading to a more suitable neighborhood now that Adam is part of their family. When I explained that my nurse's pension doesn't stretch that far, he looked at me as though I was speaking a foreign language. "Surely nursing was just a temporary career?" he asked, genuinely confused. "Didn't you have investment plans?" I tried to explain the reality of raising a child on a single income, but he just patted my hand and said, "Well, at least Adam won't have to worry about that lifestyle anymore." During their rare visits, I noticed how Jacqueline would run her finger along my shelves, checking for dust, or how she would bring her own water bottle because she wasn't sure about the local supply. Amelia would take pictures of my vintage kitchen appliances and share them with her friends with captions like, "Throwback Thursday." They weren't cruel exactly, just dismissive, as if my entire existence was a curious anthropological study. 3 years into the marriage, I barely recognized my son anymore. He worked for Richard's company, now always in expensive suits, always checking his phone, always too busy to talk for long. When the invitation to the Blackwells' Christmas Eve party arrived, I was surprised. It was hand-delivered by their housekeeper, an engraved card on thick cream paper. Adam called that evening. "Mom, you'll come, right? It would mean a lot to me," he said, though I could hear the tension in his voice. "Of course, honey. I wouldn't miss it," I replied, already worrying about what to wear. I spent nearly a month's pension on a new dress, dark blue with a modest neckline and just enough sparkle to be festive without being flashy. I had my hair done at the salon in town, splurging on a style I'd seen in a magazine. The morning of the party, I wrapped the gifts I'd carefully selected: a handcrafted leather journal for Adam, a set of artisan glass ornaments for Amelia, and custom tea blends for the Blackwells. None were expensive, but all were thoughtful. As I prepared to leave, I stared at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back seemed caught between two worlds, trying to look worthy of the Blackwell circle while remaining true to herself. The knot in my stomach tightened as I realized I was more anxious about this Christmas party than I had been about major surgeries during my nursing days. This wasn't about celebration. It was about survival. I set out for the Blackwells' estate around 2 in the afternoon. The party wasn't until 5, but I wanted to allow plenty of time for the 2-hour drive, especially with snow in the forecast. My old Honda sedan wasn't the most reliable in winter conditions, but it had always gotten me where I needed to go. The presents were carefully arranged on the passenger seat, and I had triple-checked the address, though I'd only been to their home twice before. As I drove, memories of past Christmases filled my mind. When Adam was little, we would spend Christmas Eve making cookies and watching holiday movies. John would read The Night Before Christmas, before bedtime, and we'd leave carrots for the reindeer alongside cookies for Santa. After John died, I maintained as many traditions as I could. Even when money was tight, I made sure Adam had presents to open and his favorite foods on the table. Now I wondered if he even remembered those simple celebrations. The first snowflakes began falling about an hour into my journey. Light at first, just dusting the roadway, but gradually becoming heavier. I reduced my speed and gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. The forecast had mentioned possible snow, but nothing severe. By the time I reached the halfway point, the roads were becoming slick and fewer cars were out. I turned onto Route 27, a less traveled road that would take me through a wooded area before reaching the wealthy suburbs where the Blackwells lived. The trees on either side were heavy with snow, creating a winter wonderland effect that would have been beautiful if I wasn't so focused on driving safely. The road dipped and curved, requiring my full attention. That's when I saw it. A sleek silver Bentley pulled over on the shoulder hazard lights blinking in the growing twilight. My first instinct was to keep driving. I was already cutting it close on time, and stopping would definitely make me late. But something made me slow down. Perhaps years of nursing had hardened my inability to ignore someone who might need help. In this weather, on this isolated stretch of road, it could be dangerous to be stranded. I carefully pulled over about 20 feet behind the luxury car. For a moment, I sat there debating. The Blackwells already thought so little of me. Arriving late would only confirm their opinion that I couldn't meet their standards. But then, I thought about what John would have done, what I'd taught Adam about helping others. With a sigh, I grabbed my coat, slipped on my gloves, and stepped out into the swirling snow. As I approached the Bentley, the driver's door opened and a woman emerged. She was perhaps in her early 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair styled in an elegant bob. Despite the circumstances, she looked composed in a camel-colored cashmere coat and leather boots that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her only concession to distress was the slight furrow between her perfectly shaped eyebrows. "Oh, thank goodness," she said, her voice carrying a refined accent that spoke of excellent education. "I've been stranded for nearly 30 minutes. My cell service is non-existent out here. Are you all right?" "What happened?" I asked, walking closer. "Flat tire, I believe," she said, gesturing toward the rear of the car. I was on my way to an important engagement when I felt the vehicle pulling to one side. I managed to get to the shoulder, but I'm afraid changing tires isn't in my skill set. I walked around to examine the right rear tire. It was completely flat, likely from running over something sharp. "Do you have roadside assistance I can drive to where there's cell service and call for you?" The woman shook her head. "I do, but they said it would be at least 2 hours before they could reach me due to the weather and holiday traffic. I can't possibly wait that long." I glanced at my watch. If I changed her tire, I'd definitely be late to the party, but I couldn't leave her here alone as night was falling and the snow increasing. I can change it for you if you have a spare, I offered. I learned from my husband years ago. The relief on her face was immediate. Would you? That would be extraordinary. The spare and tools should be in the trunk. She introduced herself as Eleanor as she popped the trunk. I found the spare tire, jack, and lug wrench all neatly organized in a compartment. Despite her obvious wealth, Eleanor wasn't haughty as I'd expected. She held an umbrella over us both as I worked, asking thoughtful questions about my drive and whether I lived nearby. Changing a tire is never easy, but doing so in a festive dress boots, and increasing snowfall made it particularly challenging. I had to kneel on the wet ground, and despite Eleanor's efforts with the umbrella, snow and road grime soon covered my coat and the hem of my dress. My carefully styled hair fell flat in the moisture, and my hands grew red and chapped despite my gloves. You mentioned you were heading to an engagement, Eleanor said as I struggled with a stubborn lug nut. I hope I'm not making you terribly late. A Christmas party at my son's in-laws, I admitted, finally loosening the nut. But this is more important. Family gatherings can be complicated, she said with surprising perception. I sensed this one might be particularly set. Something about her kind tone broke through my usual reserve. As I worked on the tire, I found myself explaining about Adam's marriage into the Blackwell family, and their subtle but constant reminders that I didn't belong in their world. The Blackwells, Eleanor said, her expression unreadable. I'm familiar with the name. Of course you would be, I said, feeling foolish. Someone driving a Bentley would naturally move in those circles. They're very prominent. Prominence and character aren't always aligned, she replied cryptically. As I finally secured the spare tire and lowered the jack, Eleanor insisted on helping me gather the tools, despite her expensive coat. By the time we finished, I looked like I'd been through a war zone. My blue dress was smeared with black tire residue, my coat was soaked, and my hair was plastered to my head from melted snow. I cannot thank you enough, Eleanor said earnestly. You've rescued me at great personal cost. She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. Oh no, please, I protested, raising my dirty hands. I don't want any money, but you've ruined your lovely outfit. Please allow me to compensate you for that at least. I shook my head firmly. That's not why I stopped. Anyone would have done the same. I assure you, Connie, they wouldn't, she said with a sad smile. I watched at least 7 vehicles drive past before you came along. Your kindness is rare. She insisted on taking my phone number, saying she wanted to properly thank me later. We parted ways with her, promising to have the spare replaced immediately. As I watched her drive away, I checked my watch and winced. It was 4:45. Even with perfect driving conditions, I'd be at least 45 minutes late to the party. I took a deep breath, brushed off what grime I could, and got back into my car. The Blackwells would just have to accept my appearance and my tardiness, or not. Either way, I knew I'd done the right thing. By the time I pulled through the wrought iron gates of the Blackwell estate at 5:50, I was a nervous wreck. The snow had slowed my progress even further, and there was no opportunity to clean up before arrival. The driveway was lined with luxury vehicles, Mercedes BMWs, even a Rolls-Royce. My Honda looked like a shabby relative nobody wanted to claim. The Blackwell mansion was a sprawling Georgian-style home with columns flanking the entrance and perfectly symmetrical windows aglow with warm light. Every window frame was outlined in white Christmas lights, and professional-grade decorations adorned the grounds. Life-sized reindeer crafted from twinkling lights, massive wreaths with red velvet bows on every window, and a 20-foot Christmas tree visible through the bay windows of what I assumed was their formal living room. A valet approached my car, his expression changing from professional courtesy to barely disguised disdain when he saw my vehicle. His eyes widened further when I stepped out bedraggled and dirty from my roadside assistance. I'm here for the Blackwell Christmas party, I said, handing him my keys. I'm Adam's mother. Of course, ma'am, he replied with a tone that suggested I should be using the service entrance. Right this way. The front door was opened by a butler in a formal uniform who looked me up and down with poorly concealed shock. Your name, Madam? Connie Thompson. I'm Adam's mother. He checked his list with exaggerated care as though hoping not to find my name. Finding it, he sighed almost imperceptibly. Very well. The gathering is in the main hall. I followed him through a marble-floored foyer with soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers. Classical Christmas music drifted from unseen speakers, mixing with the gentle hum of conversation and occasional laughter. The butler opened a set of double doors, and suddenly, I was exposed. A mud-splattered intruder in a room full of pristine, perfectly dressed people. The main hall was a vast space with a ceiling that must have been 20 feet high. A second, even larger Christmas tree dominated one corner, decorated in silver and blue with what looked like actual silver ornaments. A string quartet played on a small raised platform, while servers in black and white uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Every surface gleamed, polished wood, sparkling glass, shining silver. Conversation stuttered to a halt as I entered. Women in designer dresses and men in perfectly tailored suits turned to stare. I clutched my slightly crushed gift bags and forced myself to stand straight, scanning the crowd for a familiar face. Adam spotted me first. His expression cycled rapidly from relief to confusion to mortification. He hurried over Amelia, trailing reluctantly behind him. "Mom, what happened to you?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "I'm so sorry I'm late," I began. "I stopped to help someone with a flat tire on Route 27. There was no way I could leave her stranded in this weather." Amelia's perfectly made-up face twisted into a grimace. "You couldn't have called. Everyone's been waiting. We delayed dinner." "There was no cell service where I stopped," I explained, feeling like a scolded child. "I came as quickly as I could." Adam looked torn, glancing between me and the staring guests. "Maybe we should get you cleaned up first." "That would be best," Amelia agreed quickly. "Mother will have a fit if she sees you like this in front of her friends." As if summoned by her daughter's concern, Jacqueline Blackwell appeared resplendent in a red designer gown that probably cost more than my car. Her blonde hair was arranged in an intricate updo, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat. She stopped abruptly when she saw me, her practiced smile freezing. "Mrs. Thompson, how unexpected you look." Her gaze traveled from my mud-stained dress to my ruined hair. "We were beginning to think you weren't coming." "I apologize for my lateness, Mrs. Blackwell," I said, trying to maintain my dignity. "I had to help a stranded motorist on my way here." "How quaint," she replied, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "And you couldn't have changed before arriving." Before I could respond, Richard Blackwell joined his wife. Tall and distinguished with silver hair and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power, he barely concealed his displeasure at my appearance. "Ah, Adam's mother has finally arrived," he said, his voice carrying just enough for nearby guests to hear. "And looking like she's been working on the car herself." "I have actually," I admitted. "I changed a flat tire for a woman stranded on Route 27. "In this dress?" Jacqueline asked incredulously. "I didn't have a choice. She was alone on a deserted road in worsening weather." "Well, I suppose not everyone can afford to call for proper roadside assistance," Richard said with a dismissive wave. "Or reliable transportation that doesn't break down in the first place." I felt my cheeks burn. "Her car was a Bentley, actually. Sometimes even expensive vehicles have problems." "Indeed," Richard replied, clearly not believing me. "Well, perhaps Amelia can show you to a bathroom where you can attempt to make yourself presentable." I noticed other guests watching this exchange with barely concealed interest, some sympathetic, others amused at my discomfort. Adam stood silently beside Amelia, his eyes fixed on his polished shoes. Not once did he defend me or the choice I'd made to help someone in need, a value I thought I'd instilled in him. Amelia touched my elbow with two fingertips as though afraid the dirt might be contagious. "Let's find you somewhere to clean up," she said, her voice overly loud, making sure everyone heard her taking charge of the embarrassing situation. As she led me away, I heard Jacqueline addressing the curious onlookers. "Country manners," she explained with a light laugh. "So refreshingly different, aren't they?" With each step through that magnificent house past people who had already judged and dismissed me, I felt smaller. The bathroom Amelia showed me to was larger than my entire kitchen, with marble countertops and gold fixtures. I did my best to clean the smudges from my face and hands, but my dress was beyond saving the dark stains standing out starkly against the blue fabric. My carefully styled hair was flat and damp, my makeup smeared. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who didn't belong, who would never belong in this world of wealth and privilege. Worse, I saw a woman whose son was ashamed of her, whose values apparently meant nothing in the face of social standing. I dried my hands on a monogrammed towel and squared my shoulders. I would get through this evening somehow for Adam's sake, but something had broken inside me, a hope that our different worlds could somehow mesh, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. When I emerged from the bathroom, Amelia was waiting, her expression a mixture of impatience and embarrassment. She led me back to the main hall where dinner was about to be served. Guests were being directed to an enormous dining room with a table that could easily seat 30 people. Crystal glasses caught the light from another chandelier, and fine china gleamed against an immaculate white tablecloth. As I followed, Amelia Jacqueline intercepted us a glass of champagne in her perfectly manicured hand. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Connie, you're looking better," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I've had a place set for you at the far end of the table. I thought you might be more comfortable there, away from the more formal conversation." What she meant was clear. She didn't want me near her important guests. I nodded stiffly, lacking the energy to protest. "That's thoughtful of you," I managed. "I always try to be considerate of everyone's comfort level," she replied, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Not everyone is accustomed to certain social expectations." She handed me a glass of champagne, which I took automatically. As I raised it to take a sip, she added, "Oh, and do be careful with the crystal. Those glasses are Baccarat 18th century. Irreplaceable, really." My hand trembled slightly at the implied warning. Jacqueline smiled again, patted my arm condescendingly, and glided away to greet more welcome guests. I stood alone for a moment, feeling completely out of place. Adam was across the room, deep in conversation with a group of men in expensive suits, looking every inch a member of their world. He glanced over, once gave me a quick, tight smile, then returned to his discussion. Richard Blackwell approached, bringing with him another distinguished-looking gentleman. "Thompson, isn't it?" he said, as though we hadn't met multiple times. "This is Walter Greenfield, chairman of the hospital board at Metropolitan General." Mr. Greenfield nodded politely. "Pleasure to meet you." "Connie was a nurse," Richard explained, emphasizing the past tense. "At some community hospital, wasn't it? Riverside Community," I confirmed. "For 30 years. How dedicated," Walter said with practiced politeness. "Always admirable when people find fulfillment in those types of positions." "Those types of positions," I repeated. "Service roles," he clarified, not unkindly but with unmistakable condescension. "The backbone of the healthcare system, of course, though not where the real medical advancements happen." I had assisted in countless procedures that saved lives, held the hands of dying patients when their families couldn't be there, and managed entire wards during staff shortages. But before I could respond, Richard smoothly changed the subject. "Walter's daughter just graduated from medical school. Johns Hopkins. She's considering which prestigious fellowship to accept." The conversation continued around me as though I wasn't there. When they finally moved away, I took a larger sip of champagne than I'd intended, nearly choking on the bubbles. Dinner was announced, and guests began finding their assigned seats. As promised, I was placed at the far end of the table, next to an elderly aunt who was hard of hearing and a teenage cousin who spent the entire meal texting under the table. From my position, I could see Adam and Amelia seated near Jacqueline and Richard, laughing and engaging with the guests of honor. The meal itself was exquisite. 7 courses of food I could barely identify, each served on different china with appropriate wine pairings. I was acutely aware of my table manners, second-guessing myself with each new course. Was I using the right fork? Holding my wineglass correctly? The few times I caught Jacqueline's eye from across the table, her expression suggested I was failing her unspoken test. Midway through the main course, my nervousness got the better of me. As I reached for my water glass, my hand knocked against my wine, sending deep red liquid across the pristine white tablecloth. There was an immediate hush around me, followed by the flustered reactions of nearby servers rushing to clean the mess. "I'm so sorry," I said, mortified, trying to help by lifting my plate. "Please allow the staff to handle it," Jacqueline called from her end of the table, her voice carrying easily to every guest. They're trained for these situations. The implication was clear, unlike me, who clearly wasn't trained for proper society. I sat rigid with embarrassment as the staff efficiently changed the tablecloth section, replaced my settings, and brought fresh wine I had no intention of touching. After dinner, guests moved back to the main hall for dessert and coffee. I tried to make conversation with several people, but each interaction followed the same pattern. Initial politeness giving way to disinterest once they discovered who I was and what I did for a living. I found myself retreating to a quiet corner, watching the easy interaction of people who shared a common language of privilege. Adam found me there, his expression a mixture of concern and frustration. "Are you okay, Mom? You seem uncomfortable." "I'm fine," I lied. "It's been an unusual evening." He lowered his voice. "Look, I know my in-laws can be a bit intense, but they're important people and this is an important night. Could you try a little harder to fit in?" His words stung more than anything the Blackwells had said. "I'm trying, Adam, but I'm not sure I can be what they want me to be." "Just for tonight," he pleaded. "For me." Before I could respond, Amelia appeared at his side. "Adam, Daddy wants you to meet the new partner from the New York office." She barely glanced at me before pulling him away. I watched them go, feeling the distance between us, stretching into an unbridgeable chasm. Lost in these thoughts, I didn't notice Jacqueline approaching until she was beside me. "Connie," she said, her voice honeyed with fake concern. "You seem so isolated over here, not enjoying yourself." "The party is lovely," I replied automatically. "It's difficult, isn't it?" she continued. "Coming into a new social circle. Some people adapt naturally while others—" She let the sentence hang, her meaning clear. "I'm trying my best," I said quietly. "Of course you are, dear." She patted my hand. "No one expects you to understand all the nuances of our world. Adam certainly doesn't expect it." "What do you mean?" "Well," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "he's mentioned how challenging it is for him, balancing his new life with his background. He worries about you, of course, but he's accepted that there are certain events where you might not be entirely comfortable." The idea that Adam had discussed me this way with his mother-in-law felt like a physical blow. Before I could process this, Richard joined us, swirling amber liquid in a crystal tumbler. "Jacqueline, the Hamiltons are asking about your interior designer," he said before acknowledging me with a curt nod. "Mrs. Thompson." "We were just discussing how different this must all be for Connie," Jacqueline explained. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, quite the cultural adjustment, I imagine." I felt my patience fraying. "It's certainly different from the hospital Christmas parties I'm used to. Less emphasis on status, more on genuine connection." His eyebrows rose at my subtle challenge. "There's something to be said for maintaining certain standards, wouldn't you agree? It separates mere gatherings from truly significant social events." Before I could respond, I felt a drop of liquid on my hand. Looking down, I realized my coffee cup was trembling slightly, threatening to spill onto the priceless Persian rug beneath our feet. In my nervous state, I overcorrected, and a small amount of coffee sloshed over the rim onto the rug. Jacqueline gasped as though I'd committed a violent act. "That rug is an antique Tabriz. It's been in Richard's family for generations." "I'm so sorry," I stammered, setting my cup down on a nearby table and reaching for a napkin. "Don't touch it," Jacqueline hissed. "You'll only make it worse. Richard, call Marguerite immediately." As Richard summoned what I assumed was their housekeeper, other guests began to take notice of the commotion. I saw Adam hurrying over, his face tight with concern, though whether for me or for the rug, I couldn't tell. "What happened?" he asked, looking between me and his in-laws. "A small accident," I began. "Your mother spilled coffee on the Tabriz," Jacqueline cut in. "The one from Richard's grandmother." Adam's face fell. "Mom, that rug is priceless." "It was an accident," I repeated, feeling my face flush with humiliation. "Perhaps," Richard said coldly. "Some people aren't suited for certain environments." He looked directly at me, all pretense of politeness gone. "We'd prefer if you left. This clearly isn't your environment." The room seemed to freeze. Even the background chatter dimmed as guests sensed the drama unfolding. I stood there stunned by the direct dismissal. Adam's face registered shock, but he didn't immediately protest. "Richard," he finally said, his voice weak, "that's not necessary." "It's for the best, Adam," Amelia cut in, appearing at his side. "Mom's upset about the rug, and your mother is obviously uncomfortable. Let's not make this more awkward than it already is." I looked at my son silently, pleading for him to defend me, to stand up for the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. He met my eyes briefly, then looked away. "Maybe it would be better if you went home, Mom," he said quietly. "I'll call you tomorrow." In that moment, something inside me broke. Not just my heart for the loss of my relationship with my son, but my spirit. I had been judged and found wanting, not for anything I'd done wrong, but simply for who I was. A working-class woman who hadn't been born into privilege. Without another word, I gathered my purse and coat dignity, the only thing I had left. I walked toward the entrance hall, feeling the stares of the guests boring into my back, hearing the whispers already beginning. As I reached the double doors, I heard Jacqueline instructing a server to escort me out properly, as though I might steal the silver on my way. The tears I'd been holding back threatened to fall as I reached for my coat. This would be my last interaction with the Blackwells, and possibly with Adam too, if he continued to choose their world over our relationship. The thought was almost unbearable. As the butler helped me into my coat with barely concealed distaste, the doorbell rang. He gave me an annoyed glance as though my departure was inconveniently timed with a new arrival. Pulling open the heavy door, he assumed his professional demeanor. "Good evening, madam. Welcome to the Blackwell residence." I kept my head down, not wanting whoever was arriving to see my tear-stained face. But then I heard a familiar voice. "Thank you. I apologize for my tardiness. The weather has been dreadful." Looking up in shock, I found myself face to face with Eleanor, the woman I'd helped on the roadside. Gone was the casual cashmere coat, replaced by an elegant evening gown in deep burgundy. Her hair was now perfectly styled, and a diamond necklace glittered at her throat. She looked every inch the wealthy socialite she clearly was. Her eyes widened in recognition. Connie, what a delightful surprise. The butler's expression shifted from professional courtesy to confusion. "You know each other, Ms. Montgomery?" Ms. Montgomery. The name registered dimly in my mind. Eleanor Montgomery was one of the wealthiest women in the country, a banking heiress who had multiplied her inheritance through savvy investments and was now known as much for her philanthropy as her business acumen. I had literally changed a tire for a billionaire. "Indeed we do," Eleanor said warmly. "Connie is my roadside angel. I'd still be stranded if not for her kindness." She turned to me. "Are you just arriving as well?" "I'm actually leaving," I said quietly. Eleanor frowned. "Leaving? But the evening is young." Before I could explain, Jacqueline Blackwell's voice rang out from behind me. "Eleanor." We were beginning to worry. Her tone was entirely different from how she'd spoken to me, deferential, almost nervous. She hurried forward, air-kissing Eleanor's cheeks, pointedly ignoring my presence. "The weather delayed me," Eleanor explained. "That and a flat tire on Route 27. Fortunately, this wonderful woman stopped to help me." She put her arm around my shoulders. "I'd still be out there if not for her." Jacqueline's face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, disbelief, and finally horror as she realized the connection. "You helped Eleanor Montgomery change a tire." "She certainly did," Eleanor confirmed. "Ruined her lovely dress in the process, too. I tried to compensate her, but she refused payment. Said helping others was just what decent people do." She smiled at me. "I wasn't aware you were friends with the Blackwells, Connie." "Mrs. Thompson is Adam's mother," Jacqueline explained, her voice faint. "Adam, your son in finance?" Eleanor asked me. I nodded, still processing the bizarre turn of events. By this time, Richard had joined us, his face lighting up at the sight of Eleanor. "Ms. Montgomery, what an honor to have you join us." "Richard," Eleanor acknowledged with a cool nod. "I was just learning that my roadside savior is connected to your family." Richard's expression faltered as he made the connection. "You're the woman with the flat tire." "Indeed. Quite fortunate that Connie came along when she did. Most people drove right by." Eleanor looked between the Blackwells and me, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "I'm curious, though. Why is Connie leaving so early? An uncomfortable silence fell. Richard cleared his throat. There was a minor misunderstanding. Actually, I found my voice. I was asked to leave after accidentally spilling coffee on a rug. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Asked to leave for an accident. More guests had gathered in the entrance hall, drawn by the appearance of such a distinguished visitor. Among them was Adam, who looked confused and uncomfortable as he realized who I had helped. It was an antique tabriz, Jacqueline explained weakly. I see, Eleanor said, her tone cooling noticeably. So, after Connie ruined her outfit helping me drove through a snowstorm to attend your party, you ejected her for a minor accident. Richard stepped forward, clearly attempting damage control. Perhaps we've been hasty. Mrs. Thompson is, of course, welcome to stay. How generous, Eleanor remarked dryly, especially considering I understand you're hoping I'll approve the merger between First Capital and Montgomery Financial next quarter. The blood drained from Richard's face. I hadn't known about any merger, but clearly it was significant. More than that, I suddenly understood Eleanor's earlier comment about knowing the Blackwells. She wasn't just wealthy, she was Jacqueline's boss. The dynamic had completely reversed in an instant. Eleanor, please, Jacqueline said, her voice suddenly sweet. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. We adore Connie. She's family. Is she? Eleanor asked skeptically, turning to me. Do you feel like family, Connie? All eyes turned to me. I could lie, smooth things over, pretend the previous humiliation hadn't happened, but something in Eleanor's steady gaze gave me courage. No, I said quietly but firmly. I don't. Adam stepped forward, then his face pale. Mom, it's all right, Adam, I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. We both know I don't belong here. I never did. Apparently neither do I, Eleanor said, removing her coat and handing it back to the stunned butler. If this is how the Blackwells treat someone who performed an act of kindness at personal cost, I question whether our companies share the same values. Richard looked like he might faint. Ms. Montgomery, please reconsider. This evening was meant to celebrate our potential partnership. Was it? Eleanor asked coolly. I was under the impression it was a Christmas gathering. Silly me, I thought that meant celebrating qualities like compassion, generosity, and goodwill. She turned to Jacqueline. You know, when Connie stopped to help me, she never asked who I was or what I could do for her. She simply saw someone in need and acted. The silence in the hall was deafening. Even the string quartet had stopped playing, the musicians watching the drama unfold. Perhaps, Eleanor continued, we should all remember that worth isn't measured by the price of a rug or the size of a bank account, but by how we treat others, especially those we perceive as having less power than ourselves. She turned to me with a warm smile. Connie, I believe I've lost my appetite for this particular gathering. Would you join me for dinner elsewhere? I know a lovely place not far from here where the company is genuine, if not as grand. I hesitated, looking at Adam. His expression was a mixture of shock, shame, and regret. For a moment, our eyes met and I saw a flash of the son I had raised, the boy who once knew right from wrong, kindness from cruelty. Mom, he said softly, please don't go. I think I need to Adam, I replied, but we'll talk tomorrow. Eleanor linked her arm through mine, a gesture of solidarity that spoke volumes to everyone watching. Shall we? As we turned to leave, Richard made one last desperate attempt. Ms. Montgomery, the merger, will be reconsidered in light of tonight's events, Eleanor finished for him. I choose my business partners as carefully as I choose my friends, Mr. Blackwell. Merry Christmas. And with that, we walked out the door, leaving behind a room full of stunned guests and a family whose carefully constructed facade had cracked beyond repair. As we stepped into the snowy night, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The burden of trying to be someone I wasn't, of seeking approval from people who would never truly value me. For the first time that evening, I could breathe freely. Eleanor's driver was waiting with her car, the Bentley now sporting a proper tire instead of the spare. As we settled into the plush leather seats, I felt almost dizzy from the evening's dramatic turn. I hope I didn't overstep, Eleanor said once we were underway. But I couldn't bear to see how they were treating you, especially after your kindness to me. Thank you. I said the words inadequate for the vindication she had given me. though I may have just destroyed my son's relationship with his in-laws. If their relationship depends on allowing you to be mistreated, perhaps it needed reconsideration, she observed gently. But I suspect young Mr. Blackwell has some serious thinking to do tonight. She was right. Adam had seemed genuinely shaken by the evening's events, seeing for the first time how the family he had married into treated others, treated his own mother. Eleanor directed her driver to a small Italian restaurant in a charming part of town I'd never visited. Despite its understated exterior, the owner greeted Eleanor like an old friend, ushering us to a private table in the back. Within minutes, we were enjoying fresh bread and wine while waiting for our pasta. "I come here whenever I'm in town," Eleanor explained. "Giuseppe started with nothing, just like I did. You—" I couldn't hide my surprise. "But you're Eleanor Montgomery," she smiled. "Now, yes, but I was born Eleanor Kavanagh, daughter of Irish immigrants. My father worked as a janitor at Montgomery Financial. I was the scholarship girl at an elite school where the other students made sure I never forgot my place." Her eyes grew distant with memory. "I married Henry Montgomery when I was 22, a scandal in his social circle. His family thought I was a gold digger." "What happened?" I asked, fascinated by this unexpected history. "Henry died young, just 5 years into our marriage. His family tried to contest the will, but he'd been thorough. I inherited everything." She sipped her wine. "They underestimated me. Everyone did. I took his inheritance and tripled it in a decade. Now I own the controlling interest in what was once his family's bank." "That's incredible," I said sincerely. "What's incredible is finding genuine people in a world obsessed with appearances." She leaned forward. "Tell me about your nursing career." For the next hour, we talked like old friends. I told her about my years at Riverside Community, the challenges of raising Adam alone after John died, my hopes and disappointments. She listened with real interest, asking thoughtful questions, sharing her own experiences of being an outsider in wealthy circles. "The Blackwells of the world," she said as we finished our tiramisu, "mistake money for worth. They've forgotten, or never knew, that character is measured by how you treat those who can do nothing for you." As we prepared to leave, Eleanor surprised me with a proposal. "I've been funding a network of community health clinics for underserved areas. We're opening a new one in Riverside next month. Would you consider coming on board as a consultant? Your experience would be invaluable." "Me?" I was stunned. "But I'm retired." "Experience doesn't retire," she said simply. "Think about it. No pressure." She dropped me at my car, still parked where I'd left it near the Blackwells' estate. As we exchanged contact information, my phone rang, Adam's number flashing on the screen. "You should answer that," Eleanor encouraged. "Remember, you taught him his values once. He may need reminding, but the foundation is there." I answered as Eleanor's car pulled away. Adam's voice was thick with emotion. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he began. "I should never have let them treat you that way." "No, you shouldn't have." I agreed, not making it easy for him. "After you left, everything fell apart," he continued. "The Blackwells are in damage control mode. Apparently, Eleanor Montgomery is threatening to pull out of some massive deal because of how they treated you." He paused. "But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I was wrong. I forgot who I am and where I came from." "And where is that?" I asked quietly. "From you, Mom. From a home that wasn't rich in money but was rich in everything that matters." His voice broke. "Can we talk tomorrow?" "Really talk?" "Yes," I said, feeling the first tentative threads of hope. "We can talk tomorrow." As I drove home through the gently falling snow, I reflected on the evening's extraordinary events. I had arrived at the Blackwells as an outsider judged and found wanting because of my simple background. I was leaving with something they would never truly have despite all their wealth: authentic connection and genuine respect. The road ahead with Adam wouldn't be easy. There were deep hurts to address and trust to rebuild. But, for the first time in years, I felt the possibility of reclaiming our relationship on honest terms, without the shadow of the Blackwells' judgment hanging over us. More than that, I had found my own voice again, the confidence to stand in my truth and recognize my inherent worth. Sometimes it takes being seen by one person to remember how to see yourself. Eleanor had given me that gift along with the possibility of a new chapter in my life when I thought the story was ending. As I pulled into my driveway, my small home never looked more beautiful. It wasn't a mansion, but it was authentic, just like me. I had spent too long trying to fit into a world that wasn't mine. Perhaps it was time to simply be proud of the world I had created for myself and the values I had lived by. Tomorrow would bring new conversations and possibilities. Tonight, I was simply grateful for the unexpected turn of events that had shown me what true wealth looks like, and it had nothing to do with money at all. The months following that Christmas Eve brought changes I never could have anticipated. True to his word, Adam came to see me the very next day. He arrived at my door looking humbled, with none of the polished confidence he'd adopted since marrying into the Blackwell family. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd shared meals after John died, where we'd celebrated his acceptance to college. The familiarity of it seemed to reach something in him. "I don't even know where to begin," he said, turning his coffee mug in circles. "Last night was eye-opening." "For both of us," I agreed. "When I saw how they treated you, really saw it, I was ashamed. Not of you," he quickly clarified. "Of myself, for allowing it, for becoming someone who cared more about impressing people like the Blackwells than standing up for what's right." "When did that change happen, Adam?" I asked gently. "You weren't raised to value status over character." He stared into his coffee. "It was gradual. At first I was just trying to fit in with Amelia's world. Then I started to believe that world was better somehow, more sophisticated, more important. The firm gave me a taste of what it's like to have influence, to be respected just because of your job title or your address." He looked up, his eyes pained. "I started to see your life, our life, as something to overcome rather than the foundation that made me who I am." "And who are you, Adam?" I asked, "because I'm not sure I recognize you anymore." The question hung between us, and for a long moment he didn't answer. When he did, his voice was small, like the boy he once was. "I don't think I recognize myself either, Mom." That honest admission was the beginning of healing between us. We talked for hours that day, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. Adam shared his struggles to balance his love for Amelia, with the growing realization that her family's values were fundamentally different from those he'd been raised with. I told him about my evening with Eleanor and her surprising job offer. "You should take it," he said immediately. "You were an amazing nurse. Those clinics would be lucky to have you." It felt good to hear him speak with pride about my career again, instead of the vague embarrassment he'd shown in recent years. The aftermath of the Christmas party had far-reaching consequences for the Blackwells as well. Richard's anticipated merger with Montgomery Financial was put on indefinite hold, causing their company's stock to drop significantly. Jacqueline's social standing suffered too, as word spread about Eleanor Montgomery's dramatic exit from their party. Amelia came to see me about a week later without Adam. It was the first time she'd ever visited my home alone. She sat stiffly on my sofa, clearly uncomfortable but determined. "I owe you an apology," she began formally. "My family's behavior at the Christmas party was inexcusable. I appreciated the effort, but I could tell she was there out of necessity, rather than genuine remorse. Thank you for saying that, Amelia. The thing is," she continued, her mask slipping slightly, "you have to understand that appearances matter in our world. When you showed up looking like you did, it reflected poorly on all of us." "Including Adam?" I asked quietly. She had the grace to look ashamed. "I know how that sounds, but you don't understand the pressure we're under to maintain certain standards." "I understand it perfectly," I replied. "I just disagree about which standards matter." We parted with superficial politeness, but I knew nothing fundamental had changed in Amelia's perspective. She was simply doing damage control. Adam later told me that the Blackwells were desperately trying to rebuild their relationship with Eleanor Montgomery, even going so far as to make a substantial donation to her community health initiative. As for Eleanor, she became a genuine friend. I accepted her offer to consult on the new clinic in Riverside, using my decades of nursing experience to help design patient care protocols that respected both medical needs and human dignity. Working again gave me a renewed sense of purpose, and Eleanor's belief in me restored confidence I hadn't even realized I'd lost. 3 months after the Christmas party, Eleanor invited me to a small dinner at her city apartment. I was surprised to find Adam there as well, along with several healthcare professionals and community leaders. I have an announcement, Eleanor said once we were all seated. Montgomery Financial is launching a new division focused on healthcare investment and community support. We'll be funding clinics, research, and education initiatives in underserved areas. She smiled at me across the table. And I'm delighted to announce that Connie Thompson has agreed to head our advisory board, bringing her extensive frontline experience to ensure our investments make a real difference where they're needed most. The table erupted in applause while I sat stunned. Eleanor had mentioned the possibility, but I hadn't truly believed she was serious about offering me such a position. Adam's face shone with pride. Genuine pride, not the strained approval he'd shown when trying to fit me into the Blackwell mold. Later that evening, Adam pulled me aside. I have news too, he said quietly. I'm leaving First Capital. Because of what happened? I asked, concerned. He shook his head. Not exactly. The Christmas party was a wake-up call, but this is about aligning my work with my values. I've accepted a position with a community development financial institution. The salary is lower, but they provide loans and financial services to people who are typically excluded from traditional banking. My heart swelled with pride. This was the son I had raised, someone who understood that success wasn't measured by a paycheck but by positive impact. What does Amelia think? I asked carefully. His expression grew serious. We're working through it. She's evolving in her own way. Her parents' fall from grace has been eye-opening for her too. She's starting to question things she always took for granted. 6 months after the Christmas party, I hosted a small gathering at my home, something I would never have dared do while trying to meet Blackwell standards. Eleanor came, as did Adam, and surprisingly Amelia. She seemed different, less polished somehow, but more authentic. She helped me in the kitchen without complaint and genuinely complimented my home without the condescending, quaint qualifier. Later, as we all sat on my back porch watching the sunset, Amelia turned to me. Your home feels warm, she said thoughtfully. Like people actually live here. Our house always felt like a museum, perfect but untouchable. It was a small comment, but revealed a shifting perspective. People can change when they're ready to see beyond their limited worldview. Some, like the senior Blackwells, probably never would. But Amelia was young enough that the foundation of her values wasn't fully set. As for me, I found healing through new purpose and genuine connections. The pain of that Christmas party humiliation faded, replaced by the satisfaction of meaningful work and restored relationships. Eleanor and I continued our friendship, two women from different worlds who recognized in each other the same core values. The Blackwells never fully recovered their social standing after Eleanor's public rebuke. I heard through Adam that they were notably absent from several major social events the following season. Richard's business eventually stabilized, but their influence was diminished. They never apologized directly to me, but they stopped trying to exclude me from family gatherings. The most profound change was within me. I stopped measuring my worth by other people's yardsticks. I embraced my identity as someone who would always stop to help a stranded motorist, regardless of what party I might miss or what dress might be ruined. That was the legacy I wanted to pass on. Not social status or financial success, but the unwavering commitment to doing what's right, even when it's inconvenient or costly. In an unexpected way, that snowy Christmas Eve became a gift. The night I stopped trying to belong in a world that would never truly accept me, and instead rediscovered the value of the world I had built for myself. A world where kindness matters more than status, where character outweighs credentials, and where helping others is never the wrong choice. Life doesn't always reward goodness immediately or obviously. Sometimes you change a tire in a snowstorm and ruin your dress and miss the party and get humiliated. But eventually, the universe has a way of recognizing authentic worth. Not always with dramatic revelations and billionaire friends, usually in much quieter ways, but in the profound satisfaction of living according to your deepest values and teaching those values to others through example. What do you think about this story? Has there been a time when you were judged unfairly based on appearances or status? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories, and share it with someone who might need a reminder about what really matters in life. Thank you for listening, and remember, true wealth isn't what's in your bank account, it's what's in your heart.